Hello everyone, here is Leticia and I came up with these slides in how to master your APA paper. I'm bringing some common mistakes and useful tips for your submission, and I know some of you already worked on your APA paper or submitted them by now, but just give some time for going over these tips with me, and then in case you need to resubmit just because you committed some of the mistakes, go ahead and do it. Also, I came up with these slides just after grading your leadership paper, and you may see some of the comments that you received on your leadership paper in these slides. This is going to be very helpful for your APA paper so you can avoid some of the common mistakes that people make regarding APA format. Here there's a list of common mistakes that I normally find when I'm grading. So make sure the title of your paper is the first heading of your paper. No extra spaces in between sections and on your reference list. Every source on your reference list should appear throughout your text and vice versa. Include the abbreviation on the first appearance, for example, American Nurses Association and then ANA. Spell out abbreviations in the first time they are used in your work. Be consistent with your formatting style. Beginning of paragraphs always should be indented. Your text should be aligned to the left and always cite your source, no matter what. And I'm gonna focus on this right now because no matter if you think, oh, I know this and I wanna write it down, you can use your own words, but someone thought about it before, is an expert on that matter, and should be credited. So that's why it's so important to cite your source always. One of the things, the title. So the title of your paper should be the first heading of your paper. So here we have API writing assignment. And in the next page, on the second page, we have the same title matching. So this is a rule in the APA format and you should follow. The second one, no extra spaces in between sections and or on your reference list. So here I have a couple examples. So this is considered an extra space because your text should be double spaced with no extra spaces, meaning these extra things over here in between sections should not appear in your paper. So here's an example of a reference list where you see this huge space before and after. You have some spaces in between the sources over here. This is not expected and you should definitely avoid this mistake, and it's very common. How do we avoid it? So if you're probably using Word, you're gonna make sure to be on home, and then you're gonna go over here and you're gonna open and you're gonna have 2.0, which is double spaced, and then you're gonna go further in line spacing options and you're gonna come up to this screen. Focusing on spacing, you want to make sure that before and after you have 0 points, okay? Sometimes for some reason Word already comes up with some extra points like 6, 8, and that's what gives you that extra space in between sections or paragraphs. Or so you have to select your text that you are targeting to be double spaced with no extra spaces, and you have to make sure you don't have any spacing before or after. The next one, every source on your reference should appear on your text. So sometimes you may cite someone over here and you gave credit to that person, but only the in-text citation is not enough for me to know where this comes from. So that when it comes to the reference list where you have that citation in the source format. So you have the title of your source, you have, sometimes the website where you found it, the name of the journal, or the edition of the book. So it is very important to have that connection. Sometimes what happens is the opposite. You don't cite anything on your text, and then on your reference list you have a list of sources, but like, how do I know that that source, it is in your text. So you have to make sure to have this connection. Everything that you cite there in your text should appear on the reference list. This is very important, and sometimes we just forget. It's very important to kind of proofread your text before submission as well. Regarding abbreviation, we have here an example. This was the first time that the person cited Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, but you do have to include the abbreviation in the first appearance. So Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and then you have this CDC, and then in the brackets, and then you have the year. So you doing that in the next appearance of CDC, you don't have to write down Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. You only write CDC, 2021, and that's it. Also, in this sense of abbreviations, you have to, sometimes we know that abbreviation and we just say, CDC. But you do have, in the first appearance, you can just say CP. You have to write it down, put your abbreviations in parentheses in the first appearance. So from now on, you can continue saying CP. But in the first appearance, make sure you spell out these abbreviations. Please be consistent with your formatting style. Sometimes we copy and paste a source, we copy and paste a specific word or something. And then when doing that, we may end up having some problems on the formatting style. So for example, here this student started with, this is the sample paper, but we have here, they start with Times New Roman, has the font, and then you have the color black. And then right after we have like this grayish color. And then you still have the same font, but with a different color. Going over the next section, you already have another type of font, the Calibri, and which doesn't match the Times New Roman that we started over here. So make sure that you use the same size, 12 points generally, and a common font to use is the Times New Roman. So follow that, don't mix, because for the reader it's very kind of distracting to have different colors and spaces in between, so it is very hard and also is not in accordance with the APA formatting. Beginning of paragraph should always be indented, meaning we have this space over here. So make sure to check how much space you need, but like some people forget and start the paragraph over here. This is a very common mistake that we should avoid because every paragraph should be indented. So we have to have these spaces over here. Your text should be aligned to the left, except for some headings and some, especially the headings, but the text itself should be aligned to the left. It's not centralized, it's not justified, it's not to the right, it is to the left. So make sure it is aligned, so select your text, come here to home again on Word, and make sure align left or Control L. Just click it here on the selection that you have and you should be fine. Now a quick guide. I know, and it's important to reassure that Jessica worked throughout the semester with lots of tips and videos and resources. So for the APA paper, you have a lot of resources that you have, you needed to check in order to come up with your paper. But sometimes we need some extra attention in some things. And we have two types of citations, parenthetical or narrative. Parenthetical, it's pretty much, between parentheses. And we have some options when we have it on one author. you're gonna have the last name of the person. Is always the standard for in-text citation is always the last name, comma, year. So that's pretty much how the format is built. If you have one author, the last name, comma, and the year for the parenthesis. And then the narrative, you're gonna have the last name, no comma, the year has to come in the parenthesis. For two authors, you have to do, if it's parenthetical, you have to use these E, okay, like this and. It has to be this one, Lee and Richards, comma, 2016. If it's a narrative, you have to write and you're gonna have the same idea, the year in the parenthesis. Three or more authors, that's when we use et al. It's important to remember also the formatting for et al. You have the first last name, so the first author's last name, et al. And et al. Is like that with a period, and then you have a comma, and then you have the year. For the narrative, it is the same idea, Lee et al. Period, and the year in parentheses. When you have a group author with abbreviation, as I said before regarding abbreviations, so Centers for Disease Control, you have the brackets here and CDC, and then comma and the year. And then for the narrative, you're gonna have the Centers for Disease, and then in parentheses, CDC, and then comma, 2002, the year. In the following citations, the reason why we spell out first is because we are going to include only the abbreviation CDC, comma, 2002, and again, if the CDC states for the narrative, you're going to have the CDC, and then in parentheses, the year. Group author without abbreviation is just writing down like University of Minnesota and the year, the University of Minnesota, the year in parentheses. So here, just so we can see, in the sample paper that you saw, there's this little mistake on the year. So the year, no matter what, always come after the author's last name. It doesn't come with the page number, but it comes here, like in this example. So according to Dodd et al. Dot or period 2010, and then you have the comma and you have the citation over here, and the page is alone over here. I know my video is in front of it, but you have it here. And then direct quotation, it's when you use the author's words. We try to avoid that. Jessica already mentioned that in class, but we try to avoid that, and we always try to use our own words too. But sometimes for definitions or other situations, we do have to use a direct quotation from the author. If it's less than 40 words, you are gonna do the same idea in the narrative according to Dodd et al. Period 2010, and you're gonna have quotation marks starting here and finishing here, and then you have by the end the page number. And then the parenthetical, you're gonna have the same idea. You're gonna have the direct quote from the author, common mobility, and then you're gonna finish in one parenthesis with the last name. Since it's 3 authors or more, we are using it all, and then period, comma, the year, comma, p.4040. It's not page, it's not pp, it's p.44, okay, for the page. It's important also, I'm not gonna discuss about more than 40 words, but you definitely, if you're doing that, just check it out, how to make a direct quotation. Paraphrasing, that's what is expected for us in the APA format. It's like reading, 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 and coming up with your own words about what that author said. So the narrative is like, according to Dodd et al. 2010, blah, 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 or Dodd et al. Point the year, states, concludes. So that's what we call narrative. And then when it comes to the parenthetical, you're going to have the same idea, but instead of having the page number, we don't include a page number for the paraphrasing. We only include a page number or a paragraph number or the minutes of a video if you are including a direct quote, like the author said exactly the same sentences or the same words. If you're using your own words, you don't include a page number. So that's also very important to remember. And for like finishing this video, use the rubric as your friend, okay? I highly recommend always following it as an outline because you address the requirements. And the rubric, it serves as a heading also to better divide your text and make it easier for the reader. So for this specific paper, if you can do a beginning, why you're writing that APA writing assignment, and then you'll go over your search for evidence. That it should be like a very nice heading for next. And then you're gonna have your topic of research over there, non-pharmacological interventions or hypertension among Latino community. And then you're going to finish with reflections, and finally you're going to have references. And we are talking about references, is not reference list, is reference. That's how we write down the reference list. Or using the rubric is very important because it's going to guide your writing. So it's very important to review the rubric before submission. Make sure you follow the criteria and apply what the rubric says. So for the first criteria, we have the identification of your chosen topic, discussing the process of selecting, your specific topic, how you narrow down, the process of choosing keywords, key phrases. This came from your practice, this came from a class. How did you come up with that idea? Also, make sure to reference the research tutorial in that discussion. Going over the search for evidence, you're going to continue providing description of your findings. What did you put it down in the databases to come up with your sources? And you have to talk about the author's expertise of that source, if there's any bias, about the audience, who reads that website or that book or that journal, that article, and discuss in detail. Again, did you use search at UW? Did you use databases? What else did you use? Add at least 2 filters, so it's expected more than 2, like years, types of publications. Going over the actual topic of your choice, you have to have more than one paraphrased thought with an in-text citation, more than one direct quote, also with the accurate in-text citation, also one set of numbers or statistics, also written according to the APA format. And then you're going to finish with your reflection answering to the 4 questions. So make sure you prepare a complete but yet succinct reflection. And then you're going to finish with your reference list. So the video was a little bit longer than I expected, but I hope it helps. And I'm available until Wednesday, so you can ask me questions, send me any email if you have any questions. Thank you very much for watching, and I see you.